President Ramaphosa has confirmed that over 3,000 arrests have been made in connection with state capture, fraud and corruption. Newsroom Africa's Dumalo Mhlaudi joining us live now from Roodepoort. Dumalo, good morning to you once again. What takes you to Roodepoort this morning in relation to what the President said last night?
Well, what brings me to Roodepoort, Goli, very good morning, is the fact that I'm getting reaction to what the President had to say last night. And this reaction would come to give us something of what the Pan-African reaction would be, the rest of the continent, but also from a human rights perspective in terms of what the President had to say, in terms of what has been done so far, and whether, of course, there is a general feeling of whether the State Capture Commission of Inquiry's recommendations in terms of the final reports have been implemented and whether that implementation is doing enough. So I'm joined now by Advocate Sipho Mantula, who's a human rights activist and political analyst. Advocate Mantula, thanks for talking to us on Newsroom Africa. Firstly, let's look at the reaction continentally. What message is this particular statement or the latest address by President Ramaphosa going to be seen as across the continent?
Tumaole, you will recall that the African continent has been having this virus called corruption, public accountability, issues of ethical leadership. And if one looks at even the AU, at some point it has been dealing with corrupt practices within the AU office. But if you look at the example or the lessons learned from West Africa to East Africa, one looks this as a learning curve for the African continent, that yes, it has taken 4 years for this investigation to take place. But also, being Africa Human Rights Day passed 3 days ago, Africa Human Rights Day talks about issues of public accountability, public service. And now South Africa should take a lead, as they are already at the Human Rights Council. Now, if one looks at how the people feel, is how are you going to prosecute? How are you going to claim those people who have benefited? And this report comes out very clear, even if it's shady, in the sense that you need to do live audit style to the ministers, to the president, but at the same time, he said this report doesn't bind him. So if one looks at this report, for the African continent, people have this sense of agency, sense of emergency, that leadership must start to a public representative, or public leadership must be accountable. And
it's a very interesting point that you raised there towards the last bit of your statement there about many critics saying that this report doesn't seem to bind President Ramaphosa, even though when he testified before the Zondo Commission, he did admit that he was part of the executive but didn't do much for fear of being halted or being kicked out. Do you think that it is a balanced report, given that glaring, I would say, omission, as people have pointed out?
Tumahole, I don't think it's a blatant report. The only is the people who will interpret it, the people who will implement it when it goes to Parliament. The Parliament being the crime scene also, and the high-risk area being procurement, that has been leveled by the report, and also the issues around the state security. If one has to look at intelligence in this country, the information peddling, the disinformation, but how also intelligence was used to siphon and to loot the state resource, from entities to individuals, from local government to provincial government. So one will show that it will be a hell of a task to our National Prosecuting Authority, to the Hawks, to the intelligence service as well, to track and trace the money that are outside the country. Maybe it will even have to deal with this case. Nobody knows of even Pala. But I am just saying that this report is timely, but how is it going to be implemented, Tumaole? It goes with the will of the public service.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for the views there. That was Advocate Sipho Mantula, human rights activist and political analyst, just giving us a view of just how important this particular, announcement by the President in terms of the implementation of that report, and in terms of the implementation of the law enforcement agencies, and what is expected is going to reverberate as across the continent of Africa, as also here in South Africa. So with that, we're just going to go to a quick ad break before coming straight back to you, Colleen.